found out I had stage 3 bowel cancer almost 3 years ago to the day. I was then forced into making decisions that I had no clue about, I wasn't qualified to make, I wasn't educated enough to make. But if I hadn't have trusted my gut, my intuition, then my life quality would definitely be completely different today. So in this video, I really want to highlight and talk about how important it is to tune into and listen to your gut. If you want to live your life looking back knowing that there were no missed opportunities and no real huge regrets. So December the 6th, 2022, I found out I had stage 3 bowel cancer, or at least I found out that during a colonoscopy there was a tumour too large for the camera to get past. I had no idea if it spread, I had no idea how bad it was. I had nothing other than fear. And of course, when I heard those words, it's cancer, it sent me into a spiral, but it also gave me a really powerful opportunity to look at my life, look at where I was and where I wanted to be. A week later, I'd had a CT scan and I was due to see the surgeon who would remove the tumour for me. And during that meeting, I was going in blind, I had no idea what to expect. He explained that himself and his colleagues had sat down on the Tuesday during the MD team meeting, multidisciplinary team meeting I believe, and he and his colleagues had discussed my case and decided that I should have my entire large colon removed. They decided that I was 41 at the time, I was young enough to survive and cope and recover if all went well from such a surgery. I asked what that would mean, my life quality. Obviously I'd have no large colon. Basically meant that I'd go for a number 2 a lot, and when I needed to go, I would have to go. So if I was ever anywhere in public, the first thing I need to do is check where the toilets were. It also meant that for probably the first 6 months, whilst my body got used to not having a large colon, I'd probably poo myself a lot. And with some other risks, obviously no large colon, your body won't absorb nutrients as well and various other things. The other option was what's called a left hemicolectomy, and that's literally just cutting out the portion of the bowel, the large colon, where the tumour was, and reconnecting it. But there are a lot of caveats to that, a lot that could go wrong. It could mean that I'd end up with a stoma, temporary or permanent. There were a lot more unknowns. And I sat there and it really dawned on me that I kind of looked at, my partner was with me, and I looked at the surgeon and I looked at the nurse in the room, and I was like, you want me to decide whether I should have my whole colon removed, which you're advising me to do, or a left hemicolectomy? And I just felt woefully underprepared. I'd only found out I had cancer 2 weeks before, less than that. And I grappled with why it felt so unfair that this was my decision to make. I wanted anyone to make that decision for me. But equally, I knew that for my own autonomy, I've struggled with that over the years. It needed to be my decision. And I sat there and I tried to tune into my gut, and obviously I was in my head, worrying, fear, cancer. And something clicked in me, and I took a few moments and I asked the question, if you could do a left hemicolectomy, just the part where the tumour is, why don't you want to? Or why is that not the primary option? And they said, well, if we take your whole colon, your cancer won't come back because you won't have a colon, a large colon. And in that moment, I knew that I wasn't going to get cancer again. I knew the reasons why my cancer had come into my life. It may sound weird. It goes against the traditional medical model. But I knew why my cancer was here. I affectionately called my tumour Colin. I knew why Colin was here. And he was just as scared as me. And it didn't feel right to have my whole colon removed. So I said, I'll have the left hemicolectomy. Then several weeks after my surgery, I'm going to go this way because it's waterlogged that way, I was faced with another difficult decision. I was told that I should have 6 months of chemotherapy. And that was a tablet form and also intravenous. So the port, if you've ever seen a port, I'd have to go into a hospital and sit there whilst this toxic drug was pumped through my body. At that point, I was never going to, it didn't feel right. I never planned to have chemotherapy and I politely declined. And the surgeon, it was the same surgeon at the time, I remember, it felt like an eternity. He looked at me when I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to have chemotherapy. And it felt like two stags had locked horns. And he looked at me and he said, I strongly recommend that you have the chemotherapy. No, I didn't. And of course, both of those decisions, the decision to not have chemotherapy and the decision against the advice of the surgical team, were extremely difficult for me because they had the expertise, they had the knowledge. I was just given the information that I needed to make a decision. I didn't have years of training. I had to go against that. I had to ignore my people pleasing. I know that sounds daft, but often we're too worried about what they'll think of us. Even in this situation, even when you've got cancer, even when it's your life, you're afraid that they'll judge you, they'll think bad of you, they'll think you're stupid, they'll think you're mad for going against them. And on top of that, I had the fear literally for my life. There was the unknown, the fear of me dying at an early age, possibly in my early 40s. But none of that mattered because there was that part in me that I worked so hard to find in my life over the years that makes me emotional just talking about it. That wanted to be heard, that wanted to be seen, that was saying, John, I've been screaming at you for years now that you're not living your life. You've been unhappy, you've been miserable, you've been struggling. And this is why Colin is here. This is why your cancer was here, as a final warning to you that things need to change. And it just seemed like a sense of irony that all of a sudden then I had to listen to my body, to listen to my gut finally, and tune into myself and feel okay with those life-changing, huge, the biggest decisions I've ever had to make in my life, and hopefully the biggest decisions I ever will have to make. And that's why for me, listening to your intuition, listening to your gut, listening to that part inside you that says, actually, this is what's right for you, is so important. But the chemotherapy, I went and did my research, I sold my car, I got active, I walked every single day for as much as I could, I lived off fruit and veg. You know, I wanted to do it naturally, I wanted to go all out, and 2 years on, here I am, I'm still cancer free, and all my scans and colonoscopies have come back clear. And this isn't to say, if you're watching this, that, especially around cancer, that my decision is the decision or the right way to go. All I'm saying is that when we make decisions out of fear, through logic, without listening to that inner voice, then they're not always the most informed decisions that are right for us, that are best placed for us. So if you take away anything from this video, then I urge you to start looking at your life, looking at those decisions. And it doesn't have to be around cancer. I just use the cancer example because it's so real, it's so powerful. It could be about a relationship, a new partner, a new job, whether you want children or not, Whether you want to go out and buy that new car that you've been dreaming about for ages, whether you want to move house, and you can think it through logically, but you'll get stuck doing that. Because once you apply logic to it, once you apply thinking to it, you're not listening to your intuition, you're not listening to what it is that you truly want, your true desire. So if you think of a situation now where that might be true, where there's a life decision that needs to be made, and start small, whether you want to go to the fridge and eat that piece of cake or not, and just check in with your body, just tune in. What does it really want? Probably wants the cake. But often my teacher talks about the fear underneath, and there's going to be a fear that stops you. Again, in my cancer example, it was I could die. And ultimately, my inner wisdom, my intuition, my gut told me, acknowledge that fear, but trust that this is the right decision for you. No matter what happens, even if the cancer came back, do it your way. I didn't want those toxic chemotherapy drugs in my body. My body had been through enough. I'd ignored it enough. So I urge you to listen to your gut. It can transform your life, it really can. And it can make sure that when you look back, that you don't regret those missed opportunities that you let slip through fear. I'd love to hear from you, so let me know in the comments below if any of that resonates with you, or there's anything in your life that you're struggling with right now, especially if you're torn between head and heart, or head and gut. And if fear is a thing that you struggle with, then check out this video next. Have a beautiful day. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being with me. Big love, John.